area. So a lot of that being hit. And are they preparing for some sort of amphibious assault? We don't know. Don't know exactly. It is interesting that they did hit the runway. So they shortened the runway, extremely small, striking it here. This was a couple weeks ago, I think, that this runway was struck. So that's interesting because it sounds like, well, they're not planning on using this runway at all. So there's going to be a different way if there are some sort of a contingent of U.S. troops that come to the island. We've got the Marine Expeditionary Unit that could be a part of that. So many different options when it comes to where to go on this island. But if you were to do that, if you were to take it, you would prepare the battlefield a lot before. And it says a lot that they didn't strike the oil infrastructure. So focusing on being able to control that, is that the next move? Is that the next 4D chess move from the Trump administration? So last night's strikes on Karj Island were textbook precision work, targeting exact IRGC bunkers, radar stations, missiles, and mine storage facilities, air defenses, support infrastructure that keep the regime's naval threat alive. And that's what I'm seeing when it comes to these power plants, the infrastructure that's being hit. For example, the Pars power production facility hit by the US and Israel was said to be powering the regime's ballistic missile program. So it's not just a willy-nilly, oh, we're just going to strike this random power plant. No, there's a strategy behind these power plants that are getting hit. And the same thing goes for Sharif University. People are saying, oh, they hit a university. Well, do you know what the university was used for? It was a nerve center, a data hub for military infrastructure creation and building of better and more advanced Shahed drones and ballistic missiles. So it wasn't just some farming university. No, you would walk into that farming university and be like, why does your tractor have ballistic missile tubes and 3 drone launcher stations on it? And they're like, oh, we've been farming in really hard dirt, and we just need something to make the rows for the crops. We need something that can really dig down into the earth. Like, this is what Sharif University was used for. So when we think about the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, their whole propaganda win is like, oh, they're just hitting our universities, our beautiful universities where we study underwater we study underwater basket making. We make little baskets and trinkets, not mines. We don't do any mining of the Straits of Hormuz. That's not anything we would do. But Karj Island sits right there in the Persian Gulf. It's off the coast of Iran, and it handles the vast majority of Iran's oil exports. Commanders made the deliberate call: leave the export terminals and civilian energy assets untouched, so the economic fallout stays focused on the regime's war efforts. And it looks like the war efforts are being targeted in a whole new way. And these operations built straight off of earlier coalition actions and come directly because Iran is still blocking the Straits of Hormuz. They're choking off roughly 1/5 of the globe's oil supply. Iranian state media acknowledged the blast but claimed very limited damage, as they do. They're like, oh, it's just a flesh wound. Meanwhile, the entire IRGC on the island likely eradicated. But don't get me wrong, Iran at this point, if we were to take parts of the island, they wouldn't blink an eye to launch a whole bunch of Shahed drones at the Marine Expeditionary Unit, or if there were other forces, 82nd Airborne, they wouldn't blink an eye. They would gladly blow up their own territory if it meant causing chaos and more harm to U.S. personnel. So this doesn't mean it's going to be a cakewalk now. It just means that the IRGC doesn't have a foothold on the island anymore. U.S. described the mission as a measured degradation of the IRGC's ability to threaten international shipping, likely led by the F-15E, probably B-1s and B-52s involved as well. But the F-15E is such an amazing platform because of the targeting pod and the amount of weapons it carries, along with having 2 crew members. So the fighter pilot in the front can look outside, look for threats, while the weapons systems officer in the back can use the targeting pod to find those exact locations on Karj Island and just make it rain. The kind of disciplined firepower that we're seeing take place on Karj makes you wonder how much more the regime can take before it just says, yeah, we're good. But it looks like they're doubling down on the rhetoric. Tehran is painting their blockade as a noble resistance while brushing off the damage from the U.S. strikes on Karj Island, South Pars petrochemical complex, and again on Pars. We've covered it a little bit, but it also turns out key chemical components for Iran's ballistic missile program, not only power, but key chemical components as well. And one more note on Sharif University: they churn out AI, advanced computing, and design work that fed the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps' drone and missile tactics. And geography here matters. Karj sites exposes the coastline, and the strait itself is a natural choke point the regime thinks it can weaponize, and they need that island. And here's my assumption. I think there's probably some advanced command and control on that island where they're actually detecting who's going through the strait. So the more we can degrade their command and control and ability to actually understand who's trucking through that, well, shipping through that waterway, that's when you actually start to pressure the regime and you start to take away their last domino, which is the chokehold on the Straits of Hormuz. But President Trump said that today would be power plant and bridge day, and that every bridge and power plant in Iran could be gone within hours, sending the regime back to the Stone Ages and leaving them living in hell. He's been clear, this isn't about a conquest, it's about basic maritime security, opening the Straits of Hormuz, and he's doing it for the greater good for everybody that uses the oil through the Straits of Hormuz, mainly China, Europe. It's not necessarily the United States that is using that oil, even though the flow of oil there does impact global energy prices. That's pretty clear. But the impact stretches from the Persian Gulf coastline all the way to those global trade routes that are right there off the coast and in the Straits of Hormuz. But we talked about the F-15Es doing some of these strikes. You've also got the option for the B-52 Stratofortress and the B-1. The B-1's a great platform right now because it has supersonic capability, and we've seen Iran doing more advanced targeting of fighter jets over the last few weeks, likely using their electro-optical cameras that have been updated and adjusted from China, maybe Russia as well. So platforms that are extremely fast, you wouldn't want to be flying up in a high altitude going slow at this point because of those electro-optical targeting sensors that we're seeing Iran focus and double down on. But US commanders now are flexing these options, B-52, B-1, F-15E Strike Eagles, overwhelming power from these bombers and fighters if needed. So when I look at it, it's like President Trump's approach. It gives Tehran an option for diplomacy first, while showing that the US won't allow this rogue radical actor to hold the global economy hostage. Now there's going to be ripple effects by striking their energy infrastructure, obviously, and their bridges. There's going to be unideal effects initially for some of the local population that's also benefiting from these massive power plants that are powering the IRGC's war machine. But when it comes to the art of war, you guys know I love that book, and what it says